Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and welcome back, guys, to I think our 23rd, 24th session of Sufi Path of Knowledge, something like that. And now we come on to the question and the section of non-delimitation, um, the fact that God is not bound by anything. Sir Irvina, please, if you could go ahead.
Thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Non-delimitation. God in himself is free of any constraints, independent of the worlds, non-delimited, mutlaq, by any attribute whatsoever. As a result, the divine essence
Yes, yes.
only be discussed in terms of negative, salbi qualities. But God is not only non-delimited, he is also free of delimitation by non-delimitation. In other words, since he is free from all limitations, he is also free from the limitation of being free. As a result, he can delimit himself through all constraints and limitations without thereby becoming delimited by them.
Okay, guys, that's a mouthful. Does anyone want me to explain that, or are we okay?
Can you please explain it?
Okay, sure thing. So the Arabic words that we're looking at are itlaq and taqeed. So we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mutlaq, right? He's not really muqayyad, he is mutlaq, right? Guys, what is mutlaq? What is mutlaq?
Absolute.
Yeah, sure. Good one, Huma. Thank you.
Non-limited,
Okay, non-limited. Yeah?
infinite.
Yeah, so almost, but you know what? Infinite, okay? Infinite is more like la nihaya laha. So in Arabic, it's literally like la nihaya, like there's no end to it, right? But here we're saying non-limited, as you said, Ghada, non-delimited, non-limited, or we're saying, as Huma said, absolute. So what do these words mean to you? So these are very theological words. They're technical words that we find in Kalam, right? In the science and ilm of Kalam. So when I say that God is mutlaq, the idea is that he is not constrained or bound by anything, especially by something that would take away from his perfection. So in Kalam, it's very important as a science that you mark out the ways in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is perfect and free from all imperfections. So when we talk about human beings are bound in so many ways, which is a sign of their imperfection, their relative imperfection, okay? So a human being is bound by time and space, aren't we? If I'm in one place, I can't be in a second place. And we're bound by time as well. I'm constrained by night and day. I can't go beyond that. So that's my imperfection. I'm bound by time and space. I'm also bound by need, aren't we? Human beings are bound by hunger. They're bound by the need for physical support and emotional comfort, right? That's straightforward, right? Um, but let me know if you guys get that with a thumbs up or anything like that, just so I know like we're on the same page.
I was just wondering about that particular phrase after he's free from all limitations. Fair enough. He's also free from the limitation of being free.
Okay,
That is really,
super.
really intriguing.
Okay, super. So let me come to that. Okay, brilliant question. But guys, do we understand that what it means to be bound? So human beings are bound. They're bound by what's called their contingencies. Human beings are bound by their imperfections, right? So to be bound by something is a sign of imperfection. Does that make sense? But what we say about God, but guys, please type yes or something into the chat so I know that this is making sense. Because if it's not, tell me and I'll go over it again. But when we talk about God, because like I know this is heavy stuff and it gets complicated. But when we talk about God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's non-delimited. He's absolute. He's not bound by time. He's not bound by space. He's the creator of time and space. And he is most certainly not bound by any needs. وَنَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ. Right? هُوَ غَنِيٌّ عَنِ الْعَالَمِينَ. He is independent and free from any needs from all the worlds. Right? That's the verse. So that means he is absolute. He has absolute perfections. To be free from want and need makes you absolute in your attributes. He is absolutely rich. He is absolutely perfect. Is there something that he can't see? No, because he has absolute sight. He sees absolutely, unconditionally, everywhere, all places at once. He has perfect hearing. He hears all things all at once. It's absolute. So that's why God has like kind of like no image, no shape, and certainly no image can do justice to him, which is why making images of him is forbidden, because the image constrains him. And constraint is a form of imperfection. You know, as glorious as any picture is, it's always marked by the imperfection of not being something else. Does that make sense so far? Give
Yeah.
me a thumbs up for okay, awesome. Awesome. Okay. So that much is clear so far. Okay. Um, but the thing is that who are the individuals who love to emphasize God's absoluteness, right? He's just so far beyond his creation. He's so far from resembling his creation, and therefore he's so different in such a way he can't be bound by anything that resembles the creation. It's the philosophers and the mutakallimun, the theologians who love to emphasize those points. They're the ones who love to emphasize those points, right? But here's the problem. The philosopher and mutakallim's emphasis on God's absoluteness is a form of limitation itself, because what they're saying is that he thus cannot be bound by anything, whereas God, by choice, can be bound by his own creation if that's what he wants. So, therefore, even though we take as our starting point that he's free from all limitation, right? He's also free from the limitation of absoluteness, because absoluteness has its own limitation, which means you can't be like your creation. But God says no. He can take on the form of his creation if that's what he wants. And that's what it is. Right? So in other words, Tina, right? In other words, since he is free from all limitations, he's also free from the limitation of being free. As a result, he can limit himself through all constraints and limitations. That usually refers to like the shapes and objects of things, right? And their characteristics and attributes. So God can limit himself in any form. And in fact, every single form you see with your own eyes is a delimited form in the cosmos, right? It delimits him. Why? Because it's shaped by wujud, which is being. So it's like you're taking wujud and you're shaping it into something. And wujud is God. So the chair you're seeing is actually God, but in the form of a chair. The table you see is God, but in the form of a table. Same with every single thing, everything else in the cosmos, which is why we keep saying that every name in the cosmos is a divine name because it's actually him. So he can delimit himself by any object in the cosmos, and that's what it is. Every object you see is therefore him. He takes on that delimitation. This is the perfect God. The absolute God that belongs more to Kalam and philosophy is missing something, right? Because they think it's too repugnant to associate God with creation. And it is repugnant if you don't do it in the right way. But they are missing something. So the word, let's just go over the Arabic a little bit. The word itlaq is to make the word mean absolute is a theological understanding of the word. It's a theological rendition. But in the actual language, itlaq refers to setting something free. To setting something free. It's when you set something free, like you launch a projectile at someone. أطلق النار عليه. You launch a projectile at someone, or like you free the reins from a horse and just bolts off. It's literally to set something free. That's the word itlaq that we're using for the theological idea of absoluteness. And taqid means delimitation philosophically, but refers to the idea of chains. It's to chain something. So these two words are set in opposition to each other on purpose, because one is to set free, the second is to put something in chains, right? So when we say that God is absolute, we are setting him free from all creaturely chains, right? Except the perfection of God is that he can be chained by his own creation in the form of their delimitations, in the form of their definitions and objects, right? So he is therefore bound and chained by his own uh, freedom, right? So he's free from the limitations of being free, right? And as a result, he can delimit himself, bind himself through all constraints and limitations without thereby becoming definitively delimited by them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. And thank you, Khalid. Yes, exactly. So launching, right? Launching as well. Um, what is the relationship between human aql and taqid and itlaq? Well, human aql, as you've intuited, my dear friend Aqil, is that the aql is a word that means intellect. And the Arabic word itself means to hobble something, to tie something up. In other words, to delimit it. So the intellect is the instrument by which we do taqid, right? Even though, ironically, it's the instrument that's used by the theologians and the philosophers to set God free. So the aql comes from the uqal, which is the hobble. It's the rope you use to tie a camel so that the camel doesn't run off, right? So when we say that a human being is aql, that's a huge compliment because he or she is not ruled by his or her emotions. So you want a judge who is aql because they're not ruled by their prejudices and biases. But when we talk about doing that to God, you are imprisoning God, right? Even though the intention is to say, I have done itlaq, I've made him absolute and free, but you've imprisoned him in the image of freedom. So it's not true freedom. So you've not made God truly absolute. To make God truly absolute is to enable him to be bound and imprisoned by any form in existence, right? Yes, Irvina, go ahead.
But we can say, in a way, well, it's connected with this, that God keeps his promises. Like, he is free to not keep his promises, but he keeps them. He says, I am just, you know? And the way that we know that he is just is by just trusting in his promise. It's not anything else that makes us truly believe that he is just or he is rahma, and he has rahma and stuff like that. So I think that this would come into these kinds of discussions as well. I don't know.
Maybe, but I find it to be I find it to be a second subject, to be another subject.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, God is free to do what he wants, but right now we're talking about the nature of God and whether, is he absolute and he is absolute, and what is the best way of understanding his absoluteness, right? You know, what does it mean for God to be truly absolute? If you say that it's what the theologians and philosophers say there's a imperfection there. But if you're saying it the way Ibn Arabi is saying it, that's true absoluteness, right? Um, he can be bound by any form in the cosmos. So, and I guess like as we keep reading, like maybe we'll find more points to get into, inshallah. Yeah, sorry, Irvina. So could you go ahead?
Yes. I'll repeat the last sentence. In other words, since he is free from all limitations, he is also free from the limitation of being free. As a result, he can delimit himself through all constraints and limitations without thereby becoming delimited by them. In his self-delimitation, which becomes manifest through his self-disclosure and self-transmutation, he remains eternally free from limits and bounds. God possesses non-delimited being, but no delimitation prevents him from delimitation. On the contrary, he possesses all delimitations. Hence, he is non-delimited delimitation. No single delimitation rather than another exercises its property over him.
So it's not like one object can exercise its property over him as opposed to another object. No, all objects can exercise their properties over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So some kind of idea, Ibn Arabi is speaking in quite a dry manner in this passage, but he probably has other things in mind. So there's a passage from the Fusus al-Hikam where he describes the relationship between creation and Allah Ta'ala as an analogy between a mother and its baby. So if we talk about the mother having full authority, she can do whatever she wants with the baby. But in a sense, the property of the baby, which is its supreme neediness, expressed through its crying out for milk, for example, exercises its property over the mother and bends the mother to the baby so that it might drink milk. In that way, the baby is exercising some kind of control over the mother. It's a weird way to speak about God. In the same way, the beings of the cosmos who cry out for their needs are exercising their properties over God with regard to their needs in the same way. Yes, please, go ahead, Mara. Mara, and then Irvina.
Oh.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, first of all.
Alaikum salam.
I was thinking about the part with the limitation, and limitation makes me think of when we're in sujood and we speak to him, even if he's he's all hearer, he hears each one of us, which also implies that there has to be silence for him to listen to only to us, which is some form of limitation because there are thousands and thousands and gazillions and thousands of people making sujood and speaking to him at the same time. And that particular attention is a form of limitation to be able to hear, but also at the same time hear at everyone, which would also imply limitation after limitation in non-limitation, if that makes sense.
You're working through the implications. If we say it the way the philosopher says it, and that God is only absolute, couldn't he still hear all the thousands and billions and gazillions of prayers in the sujood? Or would that be different?
No, he would. That's what I'm saying, that he does, but to hear, you need to pay attention and to hear it. The way I always imagined it is that he hears only me. So to hear only me, it needs to be silence around.
I mean,
So
but from your perspective, right?
I just I think I know. You're basically saying that there's a possibility to hear all at once, but right?
That
All
so
voices at once.
it's like if you take it from the philosopher's point of view, you could just say God hears all things at once, and that's part of his perfection, and that does not detract from his attention in the least. That would be what they say.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I understand. I saw it more as um I saw it more as focus on one Muslim who prays and then it's silence so he can focus, but also so he can listen, but also listen to all Muslims who pray and all people who pray to him, which would be like a layer of um, two layers of silence wrapping the speech, the dua, the words that we speak to him, which is basically the same thing that you're saying. But I think in the when I think of focus and attention, I imagine that it also needs silence so you can listen properly.
You know,
The way
I
other people don't speak right now.
I feel like
Yeah.
so I feel like you're pointing in a certain direction and you're kind of like attempting to grasp you're trying to grasp something which I think I kind of get what it is. That relates to certain verses of the Quran which says we shall try them until we know. It's a kind of tashbih. Um, and I think like if we ever come to those kinds of passages, you can see how that works, inshallah. Because I mean, I know why we require silence, but does God require silence in order to hear us? That
That
uh yeah, yeah. What do you think? But
I
I
think
mean,
I think he does. I think I think
interesting.
there is a I think he has the power to I mean where there are all the voices of all the creation, all of his creations, there's also all the silences, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
So I think the way I think it would be more paradoxical, but at the same time completely possible and completely feasible to listen to all of us, all creations, all the flowers, all the animals, all the
Yes.
believers, and also wrap wrap our dialogue in silence so it can be just just the two of us.
Oh, oh, I completely agree when you put it
Yeah,
that
that's what I meant.
when you put
Yeah,
it that way.
intimacy, exactly.
SubhanAllah.
It's like a private space. It's
And he can't do that.
yeah.
You know, it's so interesting you put it that way because um, the Prophet ﷺ hints at that, right? There's a hadith where there's a Bedouin man and someone hurt his feelings. So then he makes like this heartfelt prayer to God, Oh Allah, only have mercy on me and Muhammad alone. Then, and then the Prophet ﷺ replies to him and he's kind of like laughing. He says, You have constrained the vast. And the scholars just take that to mean that, like the ordinary scholars, take that to mean that, like, you don't know how vast God is. Like, His mercy is for everyone, or not just you and me. But then Ibn Arabi makes an interesting, like, point about that, like, quite literally. He says, You have constrained, you have delimited the absolute. So the Prophet is in wonder, because then what God will do is he won't answer the Bedouin's prayer literally by saying, now all of Rahmah is only for him and Muhammad. No, of course not. But he'll create a special Rahmah. He'll create
Uh,
as,
huh.
only, as only for him and Muhammad in that moment. That's unique. That's unique to him and Muhammad in that moment.
Subhanallah. Wow.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for like pointing us in that direction. MashaAllah. Irvina, go ahead.
Okay, I have 2 points that I wanted to make. The one is from this conversation. It reminded me of Hazrat Inayat Khan, he was talking once about Shiva. I think Shiva, and don't take me, yeah, I might be wrong, but about one god in another tradition. And then he just mentioned that Shiva goes and dances with each one, in a specific way. And
SubhanAllah.
at the same time, he is dancing with you, and Shiva is dancing with you, but at the same time is dancing with the others. But
Yes, exactly.
intimacy, in each of those dances, as you said. Um, Another thing that I wanted to mention was when you mentioned the mother and the child relationship. Um, I was reading once Fihi Ma Fihi by Mevlana Rumi, and he was actually commenting on a poem, and maybe I've mentioned this before, a poem that was mentioning this ayat that was here. If you go down a bit,
Oh, okay. Down, huh? Okay.
just a little bit. Uh,
Yeah.
so basically, that the ayahs that explain that he is the independent of the world, and
Mm,
he was commenting upon a poem that
yeah.
was talking that God doesn't need you, God is absolute, and he basically doesn't need you. And then Mevlana Rumi said, "Are you?" And I'm just paraphrasing. Are you stupid? Who would like that? That the beloved doesn't need you. And this kind of rhetoric in Quran is done for towards the unbelievers, towards those who deny.
Oh,
Uh, and the way that God addresses the believers, it's another way. And he mentions the ayat, and God loves them, and they love God. So,
exactly.
so he basically makes this uh, made clear to me that certain ayats are depend on who they are being addressed to. So
Sure, sure. And like, so it's kind of like the way, I mean, SubhanAllah, no one can pull one over Maulana ever. But yeah, the one way we can talk about it is to say that each person has a certain health, a certain portion of a verse. So it's like you try to investigate what is your portion of certain verses of the Quran.
exactly.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank
Uh,
you.
mashallah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, could you please carry on? Oh, I'm so sorry. Just wait. One second. Ghada. Good point, by the way, Ghada. Um, so to know God in His attributes is to know God in His form, and to know God as beyond attributes is to know God beyond form. So actually, knowing God beyond form is the higher knowing. So thanks for pointing that out. So knowing God beyond form is a higher form of knowing. Thanks, Ghada. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Ravina.
Is it here just as God is not
Yeah.
delimited?
So we just finished this paragraph.
Just as God is not delimited by non-delimitation, so also he is not incomparable with similarity. This is a restatement of Ibn al-Arabi's basic objection to those who limit themselves to a rational understanding of the divine reality. The rational thinkers imagine that God's incomparability means that he cannot in any way be similar. On the contrary, says Ibn al-Arabi, his very incomparability proves that he cannot be limited by any limitations whatsoever, including that limitation which is to declare him incomparable and only incomparable. Hence he is also similar.
Guys, is that fine? That's just a restatement of what we were talking about just now.
For me, it is.
Then yeah, please go ahead.
God delimits himself by self-transmutation only to open up the servant to the knowledge that the actual situation is infinite, and that which is infinite does not enter under delimitation. That which accepts transmutation from one form to another accepts transmutation within forms ad infinitum. So the servant comes out of the limits of delimitation through witnessing God's delimitation in order to know that the object of his witnessing is non-delimited being. Hence, his witnessing is also non-delimited in keeping with the non-delimitation of its object. Hence, the transmutation from form to form gives him a knowledge he did not have. The greatest ascetic discipline, riyada, of the knowledgeable servant is to refrain from denying him in any form and from delimiting him by incomparability, for he is absolutely incomparable with any declaration of incomparability which delimits.
Guys, is that fine? The reason you just pointed it out, we don't fix God according to one delimitation of what we consider to be perfect, or what we consider to be rationally perfect. So God is beyond all things. Is because then you miss the knowledge of him in each object of existence. So you miss the knowledge of him. Like, you could actually be a major saint, and in the eyes of God, you are a major saint, and therefore deserving of great respect. But that major saint actually has missed a lot of knowledge of God in existence. So he makes this point in several places. Go ahead, Irvina.
The fact that God can choose to delimit himself because of his non-delimitation explains why he has created the cosmos, even though he is independent of the worlds. When a thing's reality is such that it is delimited, it cannot be non-delimited in any respect as long as its entity remains, for delimitation is its attributes of self. If a thing's reality is to be non-delimited, it can receive no delimitation whatsoever, for its attribute of self is to be non-delimited. However, it is not in the capacity of the delimited thing to receive non-delimitation, since its attributes is incapacity. Even if the divine preservation accompanies the thing in order that its entity should remain in existence, poverty is inseparable from it. But the non-delimited delimits itself if it wills, and does not delimit itself if it wills. For that is one of its attributes through being non-delimited. Its will is non-delimited. From here the real has obligated himself and entered into the covenant with his servant. He said concerning obligation, "Your Lord has written," that is obligated, "for himself mercy." Hence, he has obligated himself. No other has obligated that upon him, so he is not delimited by other than himself. Hence, he delimited himself toward his servants as a mercy toward them and a hidden gentleness. God said concerning the covenant, "Fulfill my covenant, and I shall fulfill your covenant." Hence he prescribed for them and he prescribed for himself. They have proofs that he speaks the truth in his words, so he mentioned that to put them at ease.
Guys, I just have to mention, like, so prescription means a legal prescription, taklif. It's not a light word. Taklif is a prescription that's made by a master for a servant. So we have, so legal prescriptions are obligations. So we have obligations that we must fulfill towards our master, who's God. So that's called taklif. So all his taklif are his commands. Establish the prayer, pay the charity, do piety towards your parents, your two parents. Do not, and his prohibitions, do not come near adultery, and do not steal, do not fornicate, right? Um, do not defraud. Beware of doing falsehoods and so on and so forth. So God has established legal prescriptions over himself, which he must therefore fulfill. Yes, go ahead, Ravina.
I have a question regarding this ayat. Fulfill my covenant and I shall fulfill your covenant.
Yeah.
Does that mean that if the human being doesn't fulfill the promise or the prescriptions, that God will not fulfill his obligation in a way? From this ayat, I mean. Am I clear?
No, you're very clear. I just have to think about it though.
Okay.
Fulfill my covenant, and I should fulfill your covenant. You know, that goes back to Arabic grammar. I'd have to see if what the Arabic is.
Mm-hmm.
I will see if this is a jumla shartiyya, a conditional sentence or not. Because that's the question you're asking. Is this a conditional sentence or not? My feeling is to incline towards saying no, it's not. Like you like God would never go back on his covenant, right? Unless this covenant has a different meaning here. But that seems very unlikely. That's a really good question. I'm gonna check out this verse 240 and see what it is in Arabic and what the mufassirun, the exegetes, say.
To make it conditional, wouldn't it be so I shall fulfill?
Yeah, so if that's the case, then that's what the English translator should have written. But sometimes the English is a bit unclear, so I have to go back to the Arabic. The Arabic can tell me, so it would be written in the linguistic form of what's called jazm. If it's a jumla shartiyya, it would be on the form of jazm. But I'd have to check the Arabic. I don't know. That's a really good question, actually. So, like for example, like this covenant we see right here, your Lord has written upon himself mercy, doesn't seem conditional to me. I'll tell you. So Ibn Arabi has a big thing for covenants. So he talks about this like on in the Saluki sense, in the spiritual wayfaring sense. If you make a promise to God, it is obligatory upon you to fulfill it. The smallest kind of promise, like the not the smallest, but the simplest one to grasp and understand is the voluntary fast. When you say like, like outside of Ramadan, you go like, I'm gonna fast tomorrow for whatever reason. You have to do it. So he subscribes to the view of the shuyukh and the imams who say, now you've got to do it. It becomes obligatory upon you, kind of the same way Ramadan is obligatory upon you. When you've undertaken a task like that, you've now got to do it, right? And it's even more stringent if you make an oath to God, like an actual covenant, and you say, I swear to you, God, that if such and such happens, I will do such and such. I will give charity of so and so much. You've got to do it. And if you don't, there's a penalty to pay for that. And it can ruin your spiritual wayfaring if you don't. So that's what he generally talks about. But for the specific verse, I'd have to go back and check. Yes, Tina, go ahead.
Yes, I was thinking of this covenant because I think at the first, one of the first chapters, there was this talk about the primordial covenant, but that is only one-sided, I suppose. That the primordial covenant is the from the side from God towards us, whereas here it's in two directions. So maybe it's not the same covenant. Then are there many different ones?
Thank you, Tina. That was my sense. I'm just because I mean just now because of what you were saying, I was thinking about that, and I was just going over the Arabic that Ghada kindly copied and pasted into the chat. Well, أوفوا بعهدي أوفي بعهدكم. That really looks like it's written in the structure of jazm, which makes it conditional. Or sometimes in tafsir they have something called shabbah jazm, shabbah shart, shabbah like or shabbah jazm, like it resembles it but it's not. So I'm going to ask my friend who's more of a specialist in this field and get back to you guys in the chat room. But to me, that looks jazm. So then, if what Tina is saying is correct, and that was kind of like the thought I was entertaining. Then he's talking about like a smaller covenant, not not that major one. Your Lord has decreed mercy upon himself, right? Thanks, God. Thanks, Tina. Okay, go ahead, Irvina.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt. When like أوفي بعهدي أوفي بعهدكم وإياي فارهبون. So there is this continuation وإياي فارهبون. This is like more be feared from me.
Mm. Well, yes, definitely, because beware of breaking beware of breaking my covenant. Yes, beware of breaking my covenant. Exactly. So farhabuni, right? With regard to the covenant, because you made a promise. So beware of breaking it. Okay. If that makes sense, Rata. Okay, go ahead, Ravina.
Now, all of this, I mean his entering under delimitation for his servants, is in respect of the fact that he is a God, not in respect of the fact that he is an essence. For the essence is independent of the worlds, but the king is not independent of the kingdom, since if there were no kingdom, he could not be called king. Hence the level of divinity bestows delimitation, not the essence of the real. The Gnostics through him know God through God, not through any human faculties. They combine the declaration of God's incomparability, tanzih, with the affirmation of his similarity, tashbih. They recognize that through his very non-delimitation, he assumes every constraint and boundary. When the Gnostics know him through him, they become distinguished from those who know him through their own rational consideration, for they possess non-delimitation, while others have delimitation. The Gnostics through him witness him in each thing or in the entity of each thing, but those who know him through rational consideration are removed far from him by a distance which is required by their declaration of his incomparability. Hence, they place themselves on one side and the real on the other. Then they call to him from a far place.
This is exactly what you're saying. You have to know God beyond form. And guys, like I think this passage, tell me if you agree with me or not. It makes the matter incredibly clear. This is the problem with saying God is absolute, period. You put him in one side to one side, and you put the cosmos on the other side, and then you're calling to him from a far place. as opposed to seeing him and witnessing him in each thing. Like it's a huge difference.
It is.
Amazing. Okay, yeah, please go ahead.
The non-delimitation of the Gnostics, who are also called the folk of Allah, means that they are able to discern God in all things. Since God, being, in his non-delimitation assumes every delimitation, the Gnostics gaze upon him through an all-inclusive witnessing. It is only they who recognize God in every form into which he transmutes himself on the day of resurrection.
By the way, so that's synonymous with beliefs, other religious beliefs. Yeah, go ahead.
The science of the sects, Nihal, and the creeds, Milal, is a science which the person of faith need not study or consider. But it is incumbent upon the folk of Allah to know the doctrine of every sect and creed concerning God, in order to witness him in every form and in order not to stand in the place of denial. For he permeates existence, so no one denies him except those who are limited. But the folk of Allah follow him whose folk they are, so his property flows over them. And his property is the lack of delimitation. Hence he possesses all-pervading being, wujud, while they possess all-pervading witnessing, shuhud.
Sorry, so in Arabic, so that would be God has al-wujud al-shamil, which means these arifin have al-shuhud al-shamil, likewise. Yeah, go ahead, please, thank you.
That person who delimits his being delimits the witnessing of him. He is not one of the folk of Allah. God describes himself as sitting upon the throne, descending to the heaven of this world, and exercising free disposal in every direction of engendered existence toward which he turns. So whithersoever you turn, there is the face of God. But turn your face towards the holy mosque, since this does not eliminate the property of God's face being wherever you turn. This is beautiful. Sorry. However, God has chosen for you that you should turn your face towards something that will give you felicity. But this turning occurs in a specific state, which is the daily prayer. God did not place this delimitation upon other spatially located things. Hence for you he combined delimitation and non-delimitation, just as for himself he combined incomparability and similarity. He said, "Nothing is like him," and he is the hearing, the seeing. We began this chapter.
Sorry, Irvina. Yeah, guys, that's simply amazing, just like Irvina was saying. Any questions here? Okay, yes, Ghada, go ahead.
No, it's just like an observation. So everything here again revolves around tashbih and tanzih.
Oh, I mean,
With,
in this case, yes.
so you cannot deny one another because in everything there is tashbih and everything is tanzih.
Yeah, ahsanti. Yes, you cannot. I mean, you definitely should not deny it if you want to have this shuhud al-shamil. Yes,
Thank you.
brilliant, guys. I just saw that like we're close to the end of the chapter. Would you all like to read up to here, and then that begins a new chapter for next week, inshallah?
There is no problem for me.
Okay, Ravina, go ahead, and that'll just be another 5-10 minutes, inshallah.
We began this chapter with a new creation. We conclude with two passages which connect the new creation to the divine non-delimitation and tie it with the heart, the rational faculty, and the combination of incomparability and similarity. In the view of the verifiers, the real is too exalted to disclose himself in a single form twice or to two individuals. The real never repeats anything because of his non-delimitation and the divine vastness, since repetition amounts to constraint and delimitation. After those who had faith in God came to know him through considerative proofs, their rational faculties saw that God still asks them to know him. So they came to know that there is another knowledge of God which is not reached by way of reflection. Hence they employed ascetic discipline, retreats, khalwa, spiritual struggle, mujahada, cutting off of attachments, qad al-alaiq, isolation, infirad, and sitting with God with the aim of freeing the locus, tafriq al-mahal, and sanctifying the heart, taqdis al-qalb, from the stains of reflective thoughts, afkar, for these thoughts take engender things as their object. They heard that the real descends to his servants and seeks to win them over, so they knew that the path to him, in respect of him, is nearer to him than the path of their reflection, especially for those who have faith. They may have heard his words, "When someone comes to me running, I come to him rushing," or that the heart of the person of faith embraces God's majesty and tremendousness. So the servant turned his face totally toward him and cut himself off from every faculty that takes him away from him. When the servant turned his face, God effused from his light a divine knowledge, teaching him by way of witnessing and self-disclosure that God is not received or rejected by any engendered thing. That is why he said, "Surely that is a reminder for him who has a heart." He mentions only the heart because the heart is known through constant fluctuation in states, since it does not remain in a single state. So also are the divine self-disclosures. Hence he does not witness the self-disclosures in his heart denies them. For the rational faculty delimits, like all other faculties except the heart. The heart does not delimit, but quickly fluctuates in every state. That is why the lawgiver said, "The heart is between two of the fingers of the All-Merciful. He makes it fluctuate as he desires." The heart fluctuates with the fluctuation of self-disclosures, but the rational faculty is not like that. The heart is the faculty which is beyond the stage of reason. If in this verse God had meant by heart the rational faculty, he would not have said, "for him who has a heart," since every human being has a rational faculty, but not every human being has been given the faculty which is beyond the stage of reason, and which is named heart in this verse. That is why he said, "for him who has a heart." Fluctuation in the heart is equivalent to the divine self-transmutation in forms. Hence knowledge of the real from the real comes only through the heart, not reason. Then the rational faculty receives knowledge from the heart, just as it receives from reflection. So the heart does not embrace him except by overturning what is with you. The meaning of overturning what is with you is as follows. You attach your knowledge to him and apprehend some specific thing in your knowledge. But the highest thing you apprehend about him in your knowledge of him is that he cannot be apprehended and is non-delimited, and that he does not resemble anything, nor does anything resemble him. Hence he is not apprehended, but he is apprehended by his being distinguished from that which is apprehended. So that which cannot be apprehended has been apprehended. This is like your words. Incapacity to attain comprehension is itself comprehension.
Those are the words of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, by the way. Yeah.
The real can only be embraced by the heart. The meaning of this is that the real cannot be judged to receive, nor not to receive. For the essence and ipseity of the real are unknown to engendered existence, especially since he has given reports of himself in the book and the Sunnah through contradictory things. He declares himself similar in one place and incomparable in another. He declares himself incomparable through his words, "Nothing is like him," and similar through his words, "And he is the hearing, the seeing." Hence, thoughts of similarity were dispersed, and thoughts of incomparability were scattered. In reality, he who professes incomparability has delimited him and confined him in his declaration of incomparability and emptied him of similarity, while he who professes similarity has also delimited and confined him in his declaration of similarity and emptied him of incomparability. But the truth is found in combining the statements of the two groups. He is not declared incomparable in any manner that will remove him from similarity, nor is he declared similar in any manner that will remove him from incomparability. So do not declare him non-delimited and thus delimited by being distinguished from delimitation. For if he is distinguished, then he is delimited by his non-delimitation. And if he is delimited by his non-delimitation, then he is not he. So he is the delimited by the attributes of majesty by which he has delimited himself. And he is the non-delimited by the names of perfection which he has named himself. And he is the one, the real, the disclosed, the hidden. There is no God but he, the all-high, the tremendous.
MashaAllah. What can one possibly say after that? Guys, thank you so much. And we've come to the end of the recording, so I'm just going to stop recording here.